Here's a problem that I'll be running into, and it's mostly just doctors malpracticing and causing damage, but it's not their fault really. See, doctors have been weaponized and misinformed. A doctor is only as good as the information you give them, so when I give the doctor good information, that's great. They can make me better. But they have 25 years of my mother and father's fantasies and bullshit getting in the way. Now, what are these bullshit I'm talking about? It's my mother calling swimming medals attachment disorder and saying everything out of my mouth is a fantasy and a lie. She started this at age 5, 6, 7 when she started to get caught for what she was doing. Anytime I brought up something that she was doing wrong, it's a lie. My mother threw a shoe at my head, missed by an inch, and almost took out my eyeball. If she did hit me in the eyeball, she would have said I would fall. There's no way my mother would ever bring me to the hospital going, I threw a shoe at him and I hit him in the eye on accident. There's no way my mother could own her own shit like that. So instead, if it had hit my eye, we know she would have lied. But it doesn't stop there. She missed. She threw a shoe at my head because I called her crazy. I said, stop acting crazy. She got crazy and started throwing stuff at me, calling me names. Even chased me up the stairs. I'm trying to go to my room to get away from this crazy woman. She's chasing me all the way up the stairs. When we get upstairs to my room, she's throwing stuff at me, stuff like that. So then we're in Chelmsford and we're in a meeting with the state in like a social worker type situation. And they're asking what's bothering me so much. Is there any complaints? Is there anything that he needs to know about? I said, yes, I'm tired of my mother lying about me, throwing stuff at me, and hurting me. And then he goes, she's doing what? She's throwing her shoes at me. She almost took out my eye. She's acting crazy all the time. So then the worker looks at my mother, looks at my father. Is this true? Did you throw a shoe at your son? And then my mother goes, he's a liar. He's a thief. He made it up. No, he's out to get me because he has attachment disorder. Yeah, he has attachment disorder and he's just out to get me and it's a story he made up. Now, she's lying through her teeth about me lying because she doesn't want to take responsibility for throwing things. It's like having a goddamn 5-year old as a mother. Yeah, one that's allowed to hurt you and have control over your doctors. Imagine the most evil witch you can imagine having control over your body and your doctors making up stories about you. And that's the life I have to live. Well, okay. So we know my mother made up stories to the doctors, tainting them, making it impossible for me to get regular medical care. But what else could interfere with my ability to see a doctor? Well, my mother and father misinformed the doctor so much that the people who do know me. Now let's talk about the people who are telling the truth. David, my manager, who happens to be my emergency contact, the police officers that have known me for years, like Kevin Gano, the people who live with me, my co-workers, people like that. What are they saying to the doctors, nurses, or the people that I know? What are they saying? They say it's almost like Zach is a doctor. Zach seems to always point you in the right direction. He's always trying to help addicts, and he's always telling people to get off drugs. One of his co-workers smokes weed. We don't care if you smoke weed, but Zach told them it's not healthy. They should switch to edibles or CBD. And I was surprised that that came out of Zach's mouth because he's big into all the hemp and weed stuff. He seems to know every one on the market you can get. So when he said that regular weed can be bad, I was very surprised. But he always seems to be like a doctor. He just points you in the right direction. Now that's bad. I do not want to be a doctor. I do not pretend to be a doctor, and I never give that type of advice. I tell you where to go. If you say that your guts are hanging down, I'll tell you need to go to the emergency room and check on a hernia. That's it. Just go to the emergency room, go see a doctor now. That's the type of stuff I do. But I'm also a caregiver. I'm somebody who deals with addiction, psychiatric behaviors, stuff like that. I just deal with it. I tell people, oh, sometimes if you take 10 deep breaths, that will calm you down. Just advice like that. But my crazy roommate of 84, my crazy father of 89, my crazy mother who's dead, they all spin stories. Now, David, he just gets confused and says stuff wrong. That's why his bank is locked up. He went to 108 Beverages to buy 2 packs of cigarettes. He bought the cigarettes, he smoked them. He went to the bank a couple days later. The bank said, "Did you ever go to a gas station up the street from you? Did you ever go to a gas station?" Dave goes, "No, no, no." So they mark it as fraud, locking up his bank. Then he tries to take money out and he can't. So then he brings me down to the bank and he says, "Can you figure out what's going on?" So I talked to the lady. They said, "Oh, David, you reported fraud yesterday." And he goes, "No, I didn't. There's no fraud." They said, "Well, there's $10 at 108 Beverages that you reported as fraud." Why would I do that? Somebody told me that there was a gas station and I said something about that, but 108 isn't a gas station. "Oh, well, they probably thought that was a gas station because of the name." "Oh," my friend says. "Oh, no, I buy cigarettes at 108. Oh, that was me. I get the question now." And then they try to unlock it, but they can't because he has to go down in person and then he ends up in the hospital. Now, why did all this happen? How did Dave get in so much trouble where he is in trouble with the courts for spending his rent money? He's in trouble with the bank for locking it up on himself. We got all these other troubles. What's going on with an 84-year-old where he's in so much trouble? He's not getting the help he needs. He needs a rep payee, and he needs somebody to be working with him at the doctor's so they can bring him down and pass on the information, make sure he's not eating a giant bag of candy for supper. Because he does stupid shit like that, and I'm the one who intervenes, takes a bag of candy, puts it on the top shelf, and says, "You had a half a bag. That's way too much, David. You're way too much. You cannot eat the biggest bag they have of Tootsie Rolls at Market Basket. That is for trick-or-treaters. That is over 1,000 pieces of candy, David, and you just ate half of them. That's 500 Tootsie Rolls. Do you see you have a whole fucking trash can of wrappers? I leave for an hour, I come back, and you're eating candy for supper." Anyways, he's 89 and senile. You got to remember that. So anyways, I'm trying to work these details out. But David's in the hospital going, "Zach is like a doctor. Zach is like a doctor. Zach is like a doctor. Oh, yeah, he always helps me. He's like a doctor. Yes, he's always helping me. He's like a doctor." That is going to get me in trouble. And it's not, well, it's true. I'm more like a social worker. That's what I told them to say. I said, if you're going to say stuff like that, say I'm like a social worker, not a doctor. I don't treat, diagnose, or prescribe. I just point you in the right direction and I help you fill out paperwork and I keep an eye on things for you. If something's going wrong, I explain what's going wrong. That's more of a social worker. But see, David is a senile man who can't speak right. So he's in the hospital right now with Wentworth Douglas, somebody I've already filed with the Better Business Bureau for, somebody I'm filing a bunch of stuff on because I have proof. I got pictures and recordings. I have pictures and recordings of them malpracticing, even charging my insurance just to play a game with me. Yeah, I needed a do not lift order, and they gave me an excuse from gym class because I have a funny voice. And my father said, "My voice is just a game. I'm just doing it on purpose." His voice, no, he's just childish. Yes, he's just a child. That's what it is. My voice will be childish when I'm 63 years old. It doesn't matter. It's a disability. It's a speech impediment. I've had it for 25 years. I've had seizures, falls. I have scars all over my body from it. It's real, all right. And my voice isn't changing. Not until I get epilepsy medication, and then it'll go down a little notch. It's still pretty bad, but it levels out a little bit with epilepsy medication. Well, then why ain't I on epilepsy medication? Because my father and mother continue to lie at doctors. So we got 25 years of my mother going, "Everything's a fantasy. He's mentally ill. He's looking for attention. He wants to be this. He wants to do that. He wants to do this. He's looking for attention. He's trying to be this. He's pretending to be that. He's lying about this. It's a fantasy here. He needs drugs." All those type of bullshit. So when my roommate is at the hospital going, "Zach is like a doctor. Zach is like a doctor. Zach is like a doctor." Then my mother and father are going, "Zach's mentally ill. He pretends. He makes up stories. He pretends it's all a fantasy." What do you think is going to happen when I try to pass on medical advice from Dr. Romansky to the Wentworth Douglas? Or what do you think happens when I go to the emergency room for a seizure and I try to tell the doctor what to do? I say, "No, no, no. Give me epilepsy medication and my legs will work again. Just give me that and I'll be out of here in no time." What do you think the doctor's going to do when he has 25 years of my mother's and father's bullshit? They have David in another room going, "Zach's like a doctor. Zach's like a doctor. Zach's like a doctor." They're going to claim that I'm mentally ill, I'm pretending to be a doctor, and I'm making up medical stories. Something I've never done in my entire life. All this is based on real evidence. When I say I'm bleeding into my testicles, it's because we got pictures of blood in my testicles. There's a very clear picture of that. But what did they do? Nothing. Because my mother and father told them it's just a game. He's trying to show you his testicles for fun. Yes, yes, yes. And how did they say this exactly? They called up and they said everything is a mental illness. It's all a fantasy. It's all a game with Zach. Then they wrote that down on my file. And now whenever something isn't visible, they jump right to it must be a made up story. That's why when my testicles were filling with blood and I went into the emergency room, the first thing they said is, "Don't you want a psychiatrist?" And then I said, "Sure, whatever. But first, why don't you look at the patient for at least a minute before you make that conclusion?" Because remember, the doctor already read my father's and mother's information. So far, the emergency doctor only has what my mother and father want to tell them. They have nothing about my real illnesses. Absolutely nothing. They have nothing. Let's see. How much of my real injuries and my real disability did my mother and father report? Okay. I haven't been able to move my legs, arms, or body properly in 25 years. We knew that when I was in Westford. That's why they tried ballet. That's why the doctors were so concerned. We know what was happening in Texas. We know what was happening in New Mexico. We know what was happening in Maine. I even fell to the ground in Maine during a fireworks show screaming in pain. We know in Chelmsford I was called into the living room for bumping in the furniture and falling down all the time. So that's 10 years of my mother and father seeing me have problems moving my body. I'm telling my arm to move one way and it spasms another way. I try to sit down and my legs start bouncing by themselves. I twitch, I'm ticky, I can't walk straight. I try to throw a basketball and it goes in the first two times, but then I just lose the spasm. I just spasm and it goes opposite. You can see this all the time. I'll try to throw a tile and I'll get a spasm late. It'll come late or earlier. It won't do what I tell it. And sometimes I have full blown seizures when I try to force it. So we know that this is a problem. They've been witnessing this in me for years. And if they try to lie and go, "We didn't see anything like that," then why did you call me in the fucking living room at age 15 and start belittling me for having marks on my shins? I had scabs on my shins and elbow. I got bumped into a damn bed frame like I do all the fucking time still today. My watch at that time broke in a doorknob, and we have me spasming in the doorways as well. So we know that I'm having a lot of twitches, spasms, things like that. Now, how much did you tell the doctors about that? Well, this is what my mother talked about when she found out. When my mother called me in the living room, found out that I'm bumping in the furniture still after 10 years, I'm still having problems moving my body. My mother decided to tell the doctor everything is self-harming, it's all suicidal behavior. Okay, so we know that my mother covered this up real good and my father made no attempt to fix it. Well, now I'm 32. So what would happen if I went into the hospital trying to give the doctors information about my condition right now? Now that they've been tainted by my mother, father, and we got David in a room going, "He's like a doctor. He's like a doctor. Zach studies all the time. He shows me these books and things to read. He's like a doctor. He knows all the medications. He knows all the herbs. He's like a doctor." No, I'm not. I'm like a herbalist slash social worker. That's it. I'm a caregiver at home, social worker slash holistic medicine guy. But I do know stuff like wiping the port. That does not mean I'm like a doctor. That means I'm like somebody who looks for bad doctors. I'm somebody who looks for doctors that aren't doing their job. If a nurse isn't wiping the port in between shots, that can cause an infection. That's the type of stuff I look for. Or just basic side effects of medications. If you come home with a medication I never heard of, I Google it and I give you a side effect list. Or I have you read the side effect list from the hospital. That is not me acting like a doctor. But see, with my mother and father doing this, and with me filing with the Better Business Bureau, so the doctors don't like me. So once when I have to file with the Better Business Bureau and this shit goes out haywire, this is what happens. See, the first 3 years I was up here, we couldn't move forward. The second 2 years after that, we couldn't move forward. But in the last 2 years now, This is nothing more. My father wants to wait until I'm dead or hurt or until things fall apart and then use that as a feedback loop. No, the doctors have been burned by you. You burnt all the fucking jobs. If I want to go back to work, this is not going to work now. I'm going to have to move into another apartment in another town, get another neurologist, and start over again because of my father's fucking lies. Can't you just fucking let me live? Can't you just let me live? After 25 years, can't I just get the medicine I need? Can't I go to my doctor and have my doctor be my doctor? Not a fucking Patricia's doctor, not your doctor. I don't need your fucking stories. I don't need your fucking stories. They don't help me. You're supposed to be helping me. If your medical stories were helping me, I wouldn't be complaining. Instead, they're keeping me injured. I'm not able to return to my work. I'm having to live in the woods because of my mother and father's fucking made up stories. If I get a seizure today, I will not get treatment. If they find me bloodied, unable to walk on the side of the road, they will call an ambulance when they find me. I will go to Wentworth Douglas Hospital. Once when I wake up, they will just release me. Why? Why every time I'm found unconscious, needing stitches on my cheek, and unable to move my legs, they're pushing me out on a wheelchair, why is it that they release me to have somebody else try to pick me up on their shoulders and drag me to their car? And then they just throw me into my bed for about a week while I practice moving my legs again. Why would I have to go through that, Dad? Why? Why would somebody have a seizure on the side of the fucking road and not get medical care for it? Tell me. Because it is real. Everybody sees it. These scars, the blood, the injuries, all the fucking lack of movement, the fact that I can't drive a car, that's real. If I drive a car, I'll be off the road. So we know it's fucking real. So if it's real, I'm really getting injured. I'm really hurt. I have organs that hurt for the last 25 fucking years. I have PTSD memories that flash before my eyes on a regular basis. So if it's that real, why aren't the doctors doing anything about it? I have an answer for you. It's a very simple answer because the doctors told me themselves. They don't have any proper medical history on this. Instead, they have statements from my mother and father saying everything is a fantasy and I lived in the woods like a mental drunk, just living in the woods. But no doctor knew why. Why was I living in the woods instead of a shelter? Tell me that. Why was I living in the woods instead of a shelter? Because the shelters cannot have me stay with a disability like this undocumented. My parents did not document my disabilities. Instead, they made up disabilities so they could get Social Security and cover up my mother's crime. If my father knew it or not, now he does. I've told him, he knows, he just wants to get away with it now. He wants to run away and say, oh, it's all a story, that's a story. I don't lie. I've never lied to him. I'm the type of person that used to tell my father I drank a beer. I'm literally the kid who snitched himself out. So my father's, oh, Zach's a liar. That's complete bullshit. He can't name a real lie at all. Every single lie is just some kid shit, and that's it. But I'll tell you what, name how many of your kids came up admitting to something they did wrong. Tell me how many of your kids would drink a beer with a friend when they're only 16, 17 years old, come up to you and say, I drank a beer. None of them. I'm the one coming up with the truth. This is the truth. I drank a beer then, and my mother did this to me now. It's the truth. We all know it. The injuries don't lie. My coworkers, my managers, they see it every day. The teachers in Westford saw it every day. The fucking people in Texas, the teachers and the doctors there were concerned about this, and they saw me having problems moving my body in Texas. The people in New Mexico found me unconscious behind a tree, had to carry me in, and never even reported that to my parents. Then they moved me to Maine, cutting off more doctors and more medical care. Why don't the doctors have more on this? Because my mother and father could care less if I ever walked right again. My mother never ever gave a fuck if I could move my body properly. Even though epilepsy medication is right there, we know it works, we know it can treat me, we know I can get better, but they won't allow it because of my mother's and father's choices. They still to this day choose to cut off my medical care versus letting me just get better. I could get better by the end of the week If I was just allowed to go into the doctors, if I was my own doctor, I would write up a diagnosis. My mother had Munchausen syndrome. She slipped me pills at age 7. She also had these type of problems that caused an overdose. After this overdose, I exhibited coordination problems. They tried to treat it with physical therapy and speech therapy, but then I was suddenly moved to Texas. When I moved to Texas, we also went to the doctors, but my mother was cutting off any information that could be looked into this. She did not continue where we left off in Westford. So at that point, my disability became permanent. What is my disability? It's a neurological disorder that causes epileptic seizures, lack of movement in the legs, lack of speech. I become nonverbal at times, or I sound a little funny. I'll try to force it out. Oh, so, I sound like this, or something like that. Well, I try to force it out my nervous system. So we know that that's a big fucking problem. Because if you can't move your legs at times, sorry, no, you need that. You need that if you want to live in your car. You need that if you want to work a job. You need that if you need to go to Social Security. You can't collect Social Security with a real disability not established and a bunch of fake disabilities made up about you. You can't just go and live life like that. It doesn't work. You don't get to live life if your mother made up 100 fake disabilities that nobody can see or know, and then you have real disabilities nobody's ever heard of because nobody's allowed you to look into it. So just in the last 6 years, they're starting to realize what's going on. But every time you move to another state and another town, you have to restart with the doctors from the beginning. And every time I do that, they're going to have a snowball going downhill. Because what do you think the Wentworth Douglas doctors are going to say now? They're going to say, Zach is pretending to be a doctor. Yes, we have it from David, who's held against his will because he's making no sense and he can't make his own decisions. So when David says he thinks that the doctor has poisoned him, like he just said recently, he said it today, he said it yesterday, that he thinks the doctors are giving him medicine that he's not prescribed, making him dizzy and sick. David told me that. I took a record. But David also is telling the nurses, Zach's like a doctor, Zach's like a doctor. Yeah, Zach's real good like a doctor. But when he says that, then the doctors are going to write down Zach's pretending to be a doctor. But no, I'm not. That's just David misunderstanding the words social worker, doctor, and caregiver. He switches them out. He literally will use that all the time. So he's just using a dizzy word. He can't think of the word social worker. He can't think of the word caregiver. So he's just saying doctor. But the doctors will use that against me later when I have to go in and get treatment. When I try to tell the doctors that I just had a seizure, they're going to say, oh, Zach's pretending to be a doctor again. Just release him. And then I don't get any medical care again. Well, why is this going on for so long? Well, I did the research. We looked into it for the last 10 years. They apparently don't have any proper medical history on me. The medical history they have is everything is a lie. Zach makes up fantasies. He has homicidal tendencies. Everything is suicide. He tried to commit suicide over 100 times in his childhood. Yes, when he jumped in a pool, he was trying to commit suicide. When he was bumping in the furniture all the time, he was trying to commit suicide. He plays games, his mother said too. So look out, Zach might be playing some fake games. He also, according to his mother and father, he makes up stories. So don't diagnose him with any of Zach's information. If Zach says he has an infection in his leg, just send him away. If Zach is found unconscious on the ground bleeding, just send him away. Why? Because his mother and his father say he's doing it on purpose. Dad, you're killing me. You're fucking killing me with this shit. I need to go in and get my epilepsy medication. It doesn't take anybody else 25 fucking years to get this done. I have a job waiting for me. I work for Marbury Oil. They just need me to get a diagnosis and epilepsy medication. Now, I spent 3 years with a neurologist getting it. What's the problem? Well, according to Dr. Hodge, they took information off my father. Okay, well, that's fucked up. Okay, how about the second neurologist? He gave me epilepsy medication like the first, but it's just a stopgap measure. Nope, they need more medical history too. How about the third neurologist? Nope, my mother and father gave them so much bad information, they can't move forward until it's fixed. So where am I supposed to live until then? And while I wait for my mother and father, or my father's new wife, to own their shit, so that I can be allowed to go to the doctor. That way my doctor can be my doctor. Not my doctors are fed information by my mother and father and then they treat me on these fantasies. I'm tired of living in fantasy zone. The fantasies don't help me, Dad. Your fucking fantasies don't help. Calling me a liar is a fantasy. Calling me a storyteller is a fantasy. You want to know the truth about me? According to everybody who knows me, I need to learn how to lie because I'm too fucking honest. Yes, it's one of my biggest problems I'm working on. I don't know how not to lie. I come clean with everything. Why is it? Why do I have such a problem with telling the truth about everything? My jobs hate it because they want me to lie to customers sometime about something being broken. I just can't do it. When officers ask me, my friends get pissed at me because I'm pulling out weed going, yeah, I got something, officer. I have this knife and this weed on me. And then my friends are like, why are you showing the officer that? Because I don't know how to lie. The officer asked me if I had anything on me that he should know about. And I got weed and a knife. So I'm showing the officer that. And if he wants to arrest me, he can. That's how I am. And my friends get mad. Zach, you need to learn how to lie. Then my boss goes, you need to learn how to lie. So why do I have such difficulty with just telling an officer of the law, no, I don't got anything? Or why do I have such difficulty telling the customer, no, it's just broke down right now, or we're closed right now, or just some bullshit that I know isn't true? If my manager tells me to lie, or if I'm in a situation like I have weed on me and a cop is asking me if I have anything on me, I always tell the truth. Why? Why can't I just fib a little bit? Why is it so hard for me to ever lie when I need to? Why is it? Everybody else, when their boss tells them, just say this, they just say it. Why is it such a problem for me? Two reasons. One, I believe in the ninth commandment. I'm deeply religious. Two, is my mother and father really fucked with me. They really fucked with my head. I would tell the truth and then they would call me a liar. Then I would tell the truth and they would call me a liar. Then I would ask the doctor for help and they would call me a storyteller. Then my mother would beat me or throw a shoe at me or drug me and then she'd call me a liar and a storyteller. And then I would say my mother's lying and she'd call me a liar. Then my mother would throw a shoe at me and I would tell a therapist, but my mother would say it's a made-up story. Then I would win a swimming medal and ask for it back, crying, crying, crying. And my mother would call me a fantasy spinner and a liar. And then I would tell the truth about something and they'll call me a liar. Then I would tell the truth about something else and they'll call me a liar. Meanwhile, I come clean with drinking a beer. I'm telling my father about slug stuff. And every time I'm honest with them, they just make up a story and hurt me. Every time when I tell them I'm doing a science experiment, seeing if slime is fireproof, my mother comes up with another bullshit story. No, he's homicidal and gonna hurt animals. That's what's really going on here. Aren't you, Zach? You're trying to hurt animals. No, I'm not. I'm just seeing if the slime is fireproof. That's it. No, you're not. You're evil. Yes, you are, Zach. We need to bring you to the hospital and have you held down and double drugged. Getting naked in front of those interns already. Yeah, we want you to get naked multiple times a week in front of interns because you did an experiment. How dare you? You're mentally ill, Zach. You did a science experiment with slug slime. You took a match and put it to some slug slime to see if it was fireproof and you could make a fire extinguisher or something. You know what that means? That means you're a homicidal maniac and you need to be drugged, Zach. That's what my mother told me. My mother told me if I do the scientific method and I burn some slug slime and tell my father, I walk inside and say, Dad, I just did a science experiment, but I forgot I shouldn't be using matches without asking. I'm a little bit older, and I tell him that I feel bad about using the matches. I mean, it's just a science experiment. It's pretty good, you know what I mean? It's like it could save humanity. I'm making a fire extinguisher liquid, at least that's what I'm thinking of. So I held the match to the slime. The slime doesn't look too fireproof. I go inside and tell my father about it. But then he tells my mother, and my mother starts saying, I'm a homicidal maniac. I must be killing cats. I must be killing dogs. Oh my God. Oh my God. Put him in the hospital. Put him in the hospital already. Yeah, have him naked in front of strangers. Yeah.